Hello, everyone. I got 31 minutes of footage. I'm the dermatillomaniac, and you happen to be my audience. Now, today we're gonna talk, instead of like mass psychology or whatever I talk about normally on this channel, politics, whatever, like really the hierarchy and even how workers' democracy is flawed. Instead of talking about that crap today, we're gonna talk about dating. Now, I'm going to talk about my dating experience, not because I'm a short king, right? So as a short king, I have a different experience than, obviously Chad and Tyrone that could go bouncing around these bedrooms. Anyway, the behavior on the dating apps is just absolutely terrible, right? So I own this dating app, it's called Hilly or whatever, right? And no offense to this app, it's designed, I don't like the design of it that much, but whatever, it's a dating app, it exists, but the behavior on there is just so terrible. I don't know where these women are coming from, and I mean, there's millions. I don't even know how many people use Hilly. I think it's about 5 million, but I could be entirely wrong. In the United States alone, I think it's about 5 million, and the behavior is just so bad. And if that's, I'm speaking like, so on the app, right, I liked like 100 women, right? They said you have a high chance of meeting someone. About 90% of them didn't respond to any of the messages I sent. About 5 of them just insulted me right away. And then when we texted back and forth, about 4 of them or 5 of them, the last 5 I had, this after a few messages are like, this guy's bad and creepy and he's weird. And so I feel like I'm either being ignored or I'm just being insulted. And if this is the behavior that women showed to me, an average guy, I don't know how average I truly am because my YouTube channel is crap and there's really not much. I don't really bring anything to the table, so I understand. But I haven't done anything to you. So if you're treating me like garbage already, then it just shows the behavior in the app might be the behavior, you might be showing that behavior outside the app too. I think these apps attract the worst of society, these dating apps. I could be entirely wrong. Never say never. There's some dating apps where I'm pretty sure there's perfectly nice people. And what's interesting though is like, I've been watching a lot of content that women and men have made about dating. And I've noticed something very interesting. So, women are more emotional when it comes to their internal thoughts. Men don't really voice their they don't really even voice their internal thoughts. We don't know what they're thinking at the time. They sort of just take it. They'll go do hard jobs and then they go to work and sometimes they get nagged on and then they just deal with the pressure that they have. Men are very cool like that. Women, not as much. Women, they don't like the idea of being ignored or not having as much attention. Men, they don't seem to care that much about attention. You could leave them alone for a few days, even a few hours, and they might talk to themselves like I do. But most men are very, very logical creatures. They think about mathematical equations and fixing roofs and cars and and their sex drive is what made them do all that stuff. Technically, I mean, when they're young, that's sex drive, and then when they get older, it's just about, we just need to have enough money for retirement. So their sex drive is what drives them at the beginning, but then towards the end, it's the retirement. But anyway, that's besides the point. Men are very, very logical like that when it comes to fixing things. Women, not so much. I haven't really seen. I feel like 95% of mechanics are men. I don't know. That's a bias that I have. I've never really seen a woman mechanic. I'm sure maybe I have seen 1 or 2, but not to the same extent that I've seen men. Every time I go to the mechanic shop, it's always 4 guys fixing a bunch of cars and messing around a little bit with the parts, which I do think it's kind of messed up, but they do that. But anyway, when it comes to women, well, I feel like some of the really entitled women, I don't get me wrong, this is not every woman. This is just like maybe 10%, maybe even higher. What they'll do is I want big Tyrone, I want big Chad. So what they do is they find the best looking person for, instead of the guy who has the most money, they'll go out of their way to go to find the big guy, right? But once they've had enough fun with all these guys and they sleep with the same guys, let's say it's the top 10% of women sleep with the top, let's say 1% of guys, right? Then 99% get ignored, whatever, right? I could be entirely wrong, but if you look at the inequality of dating, it has more inequality than the inequality in South Africa between the whites and the blacks. That is, look at the mathematics behind it. It's incredible to me. And you see it in the dating apps. You see all the women get hellos, all their, like, I had a friend who went on the dating app, right? She showed me. And she's like, yeah, I've constantly get hellos. Can I impregnate you? Can I do this? Can I do that? You see, men, they're just responding to hundreds of women and not getting a single attention. So it's clear to me that who's the supplier of sex or dating, and and they're not dating, they're just jumping the bedroom to bedroom. And then you have the suppliers and the demanders of dating. And it's very interesting to me that the demanders of dating are they're pretty much ignored. And then the guys that have fun don't have any interest in dating, they're just having fun. So you just have an entirely unequal thing based on looks when you're young. At least when you're young anyway. When you're in your 30s, they don't care as much. Although, I've noticed that there are some women that are told this lie that they could do everything. Single women especially. And then we wonder why these kids are in jail. Why 80% of single parent households, where those kids end up in jail. It's because you can't do it alone. I mean, you can, but you could psychologically damage a kid if you do not train them correctly. If you don't put guidance on them. Men generally do it to some extent if they're kind of present. There are some men, though, where they just let their kids major in whatever crap they want. And they might be eerily present, but they're not present entirely. You have men that just give out the bills and don't really give any guidance to how they should go about a career, which is kind of sad, really. So, there's a lot of, it's very interesting anyway. Oh wow, there's a car going by. Anyway, I just feel like with this dating, and you look at the math, I feel like people don't care about the math. But I do. I'm a math guy. I love math. When you look at the inequality of dating on these dating profiles, it's like a third world country. It's like the poorest group in South Africa to the richest person in South Africa. The inequality is so bad. Or it's like North Korea level wealth inequality or whatever. I feel like North Korea is not a very equal society. Maybe it is in terms of the amount of people that have the same amount of wealth, but in terms of the dictator compared to everybody else, yeah, you can't compare the dictator the dictator's the wealthiest person in all of the country. So you just look at the inequality of a third world country, and I mean the United States is pretty unequal. We're probably in the middle of the pack when it comes to inequality. In terms of wealth, I don't think inequality leads to poverty by any means, it might lead to revolution, but I don't think it ever leads to badness. I think inequality is naturally going to happen. But the issue is, when you have such an extreme inequality, you can start a revolution. You have a bunch of men who are willing to do anything to get these dates. Some of these men, and they're all flustered up. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to be desperate. They're going to go to different countries. They're going to send money to women who want to go to the United States. They don't care anymore. Like, they do not care they're going to sacrifice their lives for this one goal anyway. Their sex drive is so much higher than women. Women don't generally think this at all. And it's kind of interesting. Not all men are like this, but there's a high percentage, including me, I feel like, we're so bored and so tired of looking at modern relationships. So we're willing to just, we like to do nice things to people who care more about us than the people who live here. It's kind of sad, but that's just the general reality. Is you feel ignored, or you feel like you're not valued. But I feel like everyone feels that way. Like it's if you look at the psychology industry, for example, we spend trillions of dollars in the last 60 years, and we haven't done anything with our psychology industry. We're still mentally damaged like we were before. In fact, things have gotten worse. The divorce rates and the single parenthood just got worse. The psychology industry hasn't fixed a single thing. They just keep telling people you can do whatever you want. And then you wonder why everyone's mentally broken. You have to put boundaries and numbers in play if you want people to actually do something realistic. And that is the issue that these social scientists and these psychologists do not apply. I put numbers in the reason in my thoughts. I put tax brackets. I put on how we can fix society with little numbers. Now, as the Austrian viewpoint generally believes you can't put numbers on things. Okay, if you're an Austrian psychologist, I understand that. or if you're an Austrian economist, I can understand that putting numbers on things generally doesn't work. And yes, it is almost nearly impossible to measure the economy. You can't measure where the metal of the axe came from, the wood of the axe, and then the miner figuring out where that axe came from. And the processes it took just to make the axe, just so he can chop down a tree and make a pencil. The economy is so much trade that it's almost impossible to track down where every little item came from every little country. You know what I mean? And most people don't even know most of the countries in the world. How are they supposed to manage an economy when they don't even know where Cambodia is, where our rubber comes from for the pencils? You know what I mean? So that's the issue, is these psychologists think they know everything when they don't even know where Cambodia is on a map, probably. They're not geographers, they're psychologists. And so they think that they believe that this inequality and these emotional inequality that people are facing is a thing that they can fix by themselves. They can't. And they can't quantify it with numbers because it's kind of hard to quantify with some of the numbers if you don't know where the numbers are coming from. So, and to be honest, I don't think you can track the economy. GDP is just an estimate. I don't think you could, the more you measure the economy, the more if you spend all your money trying to measure the economy, eventually you run out of money. That's sort of the basis of measuring the economy. It's kind of strange, but that's sort of what happens. You need to have estimates on how to measure the economy. You can never get it to the exact number of amount of rubber in the economy, or the amount of wood in an economy, or the amount of production in the economy generally. It's kind of difficult to measure every little thing in an economy, and it would be incredibly complicated. Even our banking system, I barely understand. It turns out that banks own they're forced to buy 6% of the Federal Reserve stock. That is ridiculous. But these things that people don't think about. This is turned more political than it has with dating, but again, dating is another example of this. Women just not understanding how the world works, and these 10% of women, it might be over 10% to be honest with you, because I've watched so many TikTok videos, and it seems like hundreds of people on TikTok. I feel like for every woman that makes a TikTok, about 1 out of 2 of them is rational, and then the 2 of them, it's like 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3. I see 3 irrational women complaining about how they divorced their husbands and regret it. And then they keep talking about how they partied in their 20s. And then it's like, you wasted your 20s. And then some of them crying about how they don't have kids in their 30s and how they're infertile. It's like, do you not realize how biology works? And then how they won't be chased by men anymore because they're too old. The rich guys only care about the young people or the young girls. Do people not realize that there's actually it actually is biology? They don't realize that youth leads to fertility and leads to people wanting them more? Do they not understand that? Is that something that they just weren't taught, or is it something they just ignored? Because if it's something they just ignored, then I don't know. I mean, obviously you shouldn't go for anything under 18. That's a complete violation of, in my opinion, of this basic decency. If you're a 22-year-old going, anybody 17 or under is just terrible. 18, I feel like you can consent to anything at 18, pretty much. Except for maybe alcohol in the United States for some reason. I don't know why that is, but at 18 you should be able to buy a gun, in my opinion. You should be able to go into the military, in my opinion. That's what I believe you should do at 18. Now, generally I don't advocate that everyone should go into the military, but there are some people who are poor and have the body type to go into the military. I don't, because I was rejected from the military, but that's besides the point, right? You have people who are unrealistic on dating, and it's like, I see women where they say, "Oh, I want a guy who makes $100,000." That's what is that? Less than 1% of men. And then I want a guy who's 6 foot. Okay, you just got rid of 85% of men, including me. Oh, I want a guy with blonde hair. Well, I do got a little bit of blonde hair, not crazy amounts. Oh, I want a guy with blue eyes. Oh, you're reducing the population so down now. Although they never talk about eye color or hair color. It's generally whiter women. Some women like eye and hair color too, but not every woman. They know that that's very particular. It's blonde hair is 2% of the population in the world, and blue eyes are 5% or maybe less than that. So it's just very interesting to watch these numbers that's so unrealistic already, and they just want, that's what they want for their husbands. It's Yeah, but you were messing around with all those guys. Those guys now have bounced around through every bedroom. They're now tired. They now spent all that time. You've just weirded out all the guys you wanted. And now all the guys that are left, because there's hundreds of women going after these few dozen guys, now all that's left are the guys who you just ignored and don't really care that much for. And if they have enough money, you might marry them, but you're going to use them for resources. You're not actually going to want to be with them all the time because they're kind of boring to you. An engineer, a mechanic, a plumber, those are boring people. They don't like those people. They want the banking guy or the astronaut, something a little more interesting. Which nothing wrong with that, but that's like less than 5% of men they want. These jobs that these women, want people to do, or like some of them want the sensitive psychologist, or but that doesn't make a lot of money. But like that's what people want, and so that's the issue, is like the unrealisticness of the dating market. And they tell us they tell us men they either want men to express their feelings more or not to express them at all. It's like, pick one or the other. There's one woman where she goes into a list, right? And this list is like, hundreds of things. It's like, be a carpenter, be a plumber, be a this, bake me cupcakes, do this, be surprising at the end. Well, he already has all these attributes, 6 foot, 6 figures, right? All these attributes, a bunch of trades. Like, that guy has to be in his 60s. Oh, he has to be in his 40s. Okay. At the end, though, it says be surprising. But you already have all the things you want on that list. How is he surprising you at any moment? You've contradicted yourself by having a list that contradicts the last point in your list, which is be spontaneously surprising. You can't be surprised if you have every little nitpick thing on that list. Maybe there's one thing he does that's a little bit more surprising than the rest of the list. Maybe the one thing that's surprising that he violates one of the things on that list. Like, that's the thing about this. Like, when I watched that video about that woman who had those 20 requirements, or how many requirements there were on there, I was like a little bit concerned, and I don't know how many of these women are there like that. I mean, because she was more particular than most women. Most women are like, just give me the money. I'm at the club, but give me money. But she was very particular on what she wanted, and it was just very interesting to watch a TED Talk or whatever it is. This woman was on stage talking to an audience of everybody, like women, men, and they're like, and the guy interviewing her is like, this is not realistic. You know this. Like, be surprising contradicts every other little, because you have everything, then you're not going to be surprised. So it's just, and that's the problem, is dating women, and it's a contradiction. You have to go past the contradictions. Try to make them think logically about things. If you can't, then you can never convince people. That's the main thing. You will never be able to convince people. So if you can't convince people, and they're living in your country, and let's say they make up the majority of your country, or whatever, or let's say they make up a minority, but they happen to be the only ones that are dating because all the other people are already married or already have dates, then what's left is you just have people that are ignorant, I don't know if ignorant's the word, but just people that don't care. Just people who have lack of caring, and then you wonder why you care so much, but then there's no attention given to you. You can look at all the numbers you want, but it's not going to fix your problems. You going to the gym is going to... I work out at work. I mean, I don't really go to the gym, but I can lift my body weight multiple times a day and be perfectly fine. Like, I lift boxes all the time at work, right? So it's just like, to me, I just don't understand. Like, you can do everything you can and you still won't get a date. They're some of the best guys in the world. They just get divorced because the woman or the wife just decided that she was bored that day. And then I saw the videos like that. Like Will Smith got cheated on. If Will Smith, a very loyal, I haven't seen many arguments against it. He's not loyal. A very loyal guy. He might be a bit boring, but a very loyal actor to his wife. Like, she cheated on him for 9 years and didn't say anything. Like, that to me just shows you the loyalty that he has. And he claimed that she was married with him, or he was married with her. And for 9 years they weren't actually married. They signed divorce papers in secret. And then told the world like 9 years later. If that man, who's so loyal to that woman, can't keep a woman, and he's a multi-millionaire, or even a billionaire, I don't know how big Will Smith is in terms of wealth. If he can't keep a woman, nobody can. If he could provide everything for this woman and she still divorces him and still treats him like garbage, what's the chances that an average man like me has? Now, again, I don't know the exact statistic that, whatever Jaden Smith or whatever her name is going to show up and destroy people's lives. I don't know the percentage of that. But 50% of marriages end in divorce. There is a coin toss that your life will be destroyed. Whether you're a man or a woman during a divorce, it destroys your life. It destroys your children's lives. Like, it should be a law that you should get a tax incentive. If you can raise your kid after 18 years, you should pay no taxes. If you can raise your kids correctly, put them in the right degree, after 18 years, get a tax incentive. Once all the kids are raised out, obviously. If you've got more kids, then wait extra years for the tax incentive. But, that's the thing. I generally, that's the kind of numbers I'm talking about when it comes to psychology, is the tax incentive for raising kids. That makes sense. But people don't think like that. They're too busy trying to tax the billionaires to worry about their own personal responsibility. And that's kind of sad, that they'll blame somebody else's problems on the fact that someone's wealthier or somebody has more money than them. They blame men for the fact that they work more hours and sometimes they make more money for doing the same job. And they don't actually talk about, okay, well, what if we just gave women a tax cut over men for having kids? Because having kids generally will get you out of the labor market. They don't talk about that. They say, oh, let's just tax men more and give it to women. No, why don't we just give women a 25% tax cut for each kid they have? I don't understand. It takes women out of the workforce to have kids. Giving tax cuts is better than giving them welfare, in my opinion, because at least they have more of an incentive to work. But people don't think like that. They're too busy trying to help women than try to incentivize them to actually produce things in the economy, which is kind of sad. And what's going to happen is you're going to have this problem where you have horses, right? Let's say society is a bunch of workhorses, and you have people in the back who take tax money. And eventually you're going to, the people whipping the horses on the back, there's going to be so many people whipping horses on the back, and there's going to be fewer and fewer horses that eventually you're just going to drag down society with the people whipping horses in the back. There's going to be less and less horses and more whippers, and eventually all society will collapse. And that's what's going on with our welfare system. It's going to happen. We spend 18% of our, at least 18 to 40%, give or take, depending on the county, maybe even more than that, on welfare. And corporate welfare is about 6 to 8%. So corporate welfare is about half of what we spend on just regular needy welfare. Needy welfare and corporate welfare are two different categories, in my opinion. You got welfare for the rich and welfare for the poor, and no welfare for the middle class. Everyone else gets screwed. I'm considered middle class in terms of my state calls me middle class. So, I mean, just think about that. That's just crazy to me. And you're going to have more and more whippers demanding that tax money, and then you're going to have less and less workhorses, and then you're going to wonder why there's no rental properties. You're going to wonder why there's less pencils being sold. You're going to wonder why school supplies are so expensive. You're going to wonder why schools can't fund themselves. You're going to wonder that. And it's all going to be the fault of people not looking at dates and not actually using the right incentives and the right numbers. It's all going to be because people don't understand the world. And that's going to be kind of sad when it happens. But you can tell people all they want, but it's going to be offensive to them. You can tell them the truth, but the truth is offensive. It is generally offensive. Nature's an oppressive thing. They're not willing to face nature. Conservative culture is about fearing nature, and then liberal culture is about ignoring nature and just trying to create the utopia anyway. And it's kind of interesting, the two viewpoints. I generally believe those are the two viewpoints. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong on the exact wording of that, but it's very interesting to me to see how two different groups of people think. Or I call them liberals and conservatives. You can call them Republicans, Democrats, Labor. It's actually Labor and Tories, whatever you call them in other countries, right? Whatever you call them. It's so interesting to see these thought processes. They both lead to massive inequality at the end of the day. Both parties lead to massive inequality. You're never going to be able to fix society with either of those viewpoints. But it's still very interesting to look at. Anyway, I'm the dermatillomaniac. You happen to be the intermerium people that watch my videos. And goodbye. I hope I explained why it's so bad to date in the modern day in the United States anyway. Goodbye.